So hello good people of the internet, this is Tommy Kelly, and just a quick preamble on this. I'm not going to take too much of your time, we're just going to get straight into the conversation. But I just want to say thank you very much to SPud for editing this one for me. There was a lot of work needed on it because we had countless audio problems and different things going on that you don't need to worry about. So there is some audio inconsistencies in this that you'll just have to bear with if you want to listen to the conversation, which you should because it's a great conversation. So over to other Tommy. Okay, so ElectroWizard, how did you first find out about magic?
Well, it's a story you've heard before. The players are the same, but the aspects are a little different.
Okay.
Grant Morrison.
Right, okay.
It was an issue of like Playboy magazine.
Okay. This is a new Grant Morrison introduction story.
Oh, yeah, because, I'm a dirty pervert. I think it was somewhere in like 06, 07. And at the time that I read the article, period of time after that, I couldn't really remember who the person was. He introduced this guy who was, just rock and roll comic book guy. What's this about? I like comic books. I like rock and roll. Yeah, I'm into this.
Yeah.
So, reading it, and he's like, if you do these, I can give you rituals right now. Hermes, you can go home and do them, and they'll work. I'm like, okay, you've piqued my interest.
And was the interview itself with Grant Morrison, or was it someone talking about Grant Morrison?
It was with Grant Morrison.
Right.
Looking back on it later, because I had completely forgotten about the entire interview whenever I read it. My life kind of gets into kind of a weird cycle that I've realized later in life. Ever since I was a kid, I've been really into, esoteric things or weird history, like a story of Atlantis or whatever, that pyramid. Yeah. Big history buff. And, with the history, you kind of get with the dark, spooky side of the history.
Right. So when you were as a kid and you were into the history and all that kind of stuff, was there like any kind of sense of magic at all at that point?
I had a weird sense of belief. I was raised very Christian. I was raised up in church. I was raised, Pentecostal, raised up in church from, a small child in, Sunday school, Bible school, all the way up into the big people church.
Is Pentecostal literalists or literalists in that the word of the Bible is the exact word of God? They
do kind of follow the man and a woman shouldn't dress alike. Women, their hair, they don't wear pants, wear skirts.
You let dance? Is there a Kevin Bacon scenario going on? No dancing in town?
Dancing, music is a big thing. They have like a full band. They would do everybody's birthday. Like, how many birthdays do we have in the congregation tonight? And then they would, all band would sing happy birthday.
Oh, cool. That's cool though.
A drummer and a bass player and a piano player, full thing. Then they do the same thing for anniversaries. Well, speaking in tongues, that kind of was a thing too.
Any of the snake handling stuff or any of that?
No snake handling. Snake handling was definitely not a thing in there. They were a little too clean and proper for it. My grandmother was very church. She went to church every day, and we always went to church with Mama, which was always cool because I really enjoyed it as a child. But I grew up and I saw a lot of things, and I like getting the Holy Ghost or getting the the Spirit and kind of dancing and moving and even speaking in tongues. So there was that kind of spirituality that was installed in me as a child, and I watched it, I saw it. I had some things happen with I had hardcore stomach problems as a child.
Okay.
And I was real bad one night. I was up crying, and I'd asked my parents, we called Mama and have her pray for me, and she prayed over me over the phone. Felt like instantly stomach problems stopped. Later, I think that week, we're actually in church. He took me up to the altar. All the deacons and the preacher and everybody come and prayed over me. And after that, I no longer had bad pains. I've had stomach issues my entire life. You deal with that.
And what do you put that down to? Do you think that was the prayer? Do you think it was mind over matter? What do you decide that was how that worked?
Well, at the time, it was, I guess, the belief in Christianity and the belief in church and all that. That was what it was. It was prayer, the church. At the time, growing up in that, I stayed in that for a long time. But as I got older, I started to question it.
And what were you
But
questioning? What were the issues?
if life was shit, then what kind of God's gonna let life be like now, like this shit? Going back to an earlier thing, you asked about the looking up stuff on with weird history.
Yeah.
The belief in that was that I always felt that there was something weird about the universe that I couldn't quite understand. And as a small child, I had all that stuff happen with church, which was not a traumatic experience, whatsoever. It was a uplifting experience. As I lived life, there was, living experience and seeing, okay, this is how the universe works. I'm in school. I'm a big science buff. I'm loving science and astronomy and getting really into the concepts of physics at a young age, but not as of just as a general interest.
Right. Yeah.
The way the universe works. I watched a lot of the History Channel and the Learning Channel, but I always felt that there was something weird about the universe. I remember looking up online and hearing about people filing on their taxes that they could be a Jedi. So I'm like, okay, this is weird. I'm looking this stuff up, and I find a website that's like, okay, this is how you be a Jedi. Start with a juice fast. I'm like, I don't know, like maybe 12 years old. I don't know. At this time, I'm real young. Maybe 13, somewhere in there. Maybe 12, 13 years old. I'm like, okay, this is weird. I start reading into it, and I even actually started trying some things. Then I ended up giving it up. I was like, okay, this is silly.
No, hold on, just go back a bit. You started trying some things. What were you trying?
Yeah. Well, yeah, as the juice fast and things, and the concepts of meditation, and I ended up finding stuff on remote viewing. So that's where this ended up leading. I'm going to stop this note now. I'm going to come back to it. My life has went through weird cycles to where I have come across the same information multiple times, not really put it together, and then now looking back, I'm realizing, okay, there was a whole bunch of synchronicities going on in my life I just was not paying attention to. So as I get older, I end up discovering Men Who Stare at Goats. Then I later finding out, this is a book.
Great book.
So getting the whole concept, and then finding out about Jim Channing and the real life quote unquote Jedi program.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is nuts. This is crazy. The government worked on this. Then I had realized years earlier, I had been on the internet looking up Jedi website because I was a Star Wars nerd.
Oh, right. So the cycle, that was the first kind of awareness of the cycle thing. Did you start trying to walk through walls, or did you do any of that stuff? Did you try to kill any goats?
I did not try to kill any goats. I like goats too much.
So what was then the second cycle of Grant Morrison then?
Big sci-fi nut, big comic nut, really into, I'm a huge Batman fan. One of the first movies I remember watching. And then I remember watching Batman Returns and being way too young, and then having weird, sexual fantasies about catsuit women. I've had a weird leather fantasy ever since.
Funny that.
But a big comic nerd, you get into, Alan Moore, of course, Neil Gaiman. Reading the Playboy interview, the whole this comic book cat. I ended up looking up some of Grant Morrison's stories. I was like, okay, this is the crazy weird dude talking about hermeticism. I'm going to read this dude's comics, which then I think led me to Batman, Robin Reborn, and of course eventually getting to the Invisibles. But just as a general comic nerd, reading that stuff and the concepts of magic was kept separate. At that very same time of getting that issue of Playboy, my ex-wife got a birthday gift of a book on green magic, but she really wasn't very interested in it. Me being interested in all the general weirdness, I pick up the book, start skimming through it, and it was very Wiccan. And I was like, this the concepts of casting circles. It had rituals in it.
How exactly was it defining green magic? What was the green like plant magic? Was it nature magic?
I think it was very herbalist in concept. And at this time in my life, I'm married, been out of high school maybe about 2 years or so, something like that.
Okay.
And I went through the big spell of being raised Christian, kind of starting to question it just by general life, and then Gnosticism. I'm like, I'm not really sure without proof. I mean, science makes so much more sense. It wasn't until later in life, looking back at my general memories and kind of getting into shadow work, and just looking back at memories that I'd forgot that had shaped my reality, shaped my spiritual reality tunnel, if you will, say that. Yeah. How I see the world now, looking back at all the things. But at the time, I had really not paid attention to it. I've forgotten about a lot of those things. And as of shaping my magical worldview at the time, I wasn't really sure. I had no idea or concept, but picking up that book, I found it interesting. That's when I first tried my first spell.
What was it?
It was a spell for luck.
Okay.
Because I had this really nice blue candle that was like square and saw like kind of blue and white marbly. I was reading through one of the rituals, and it was like, try this one for luck. I was like, okay, I would like to make my life a little bit more lucky. Let's try this.
Yeah.
And that's how it happened. I was married at the time. I am divorced now. That's my So in hindsight, I'm glad I'm no longer married. That was a terrible time in my life. Things are much better now. Maybe I am lucky.
So when did the next cycle then come through? Because I had similar kind of ups and downs, ebbs and flows, I suppose, where you're into it more than you're not into it.
I'm someone who really does enjoy doing research and looking at things, and I want to see what other people's got to say about it. So whenever, like, throughout my life, things would happenstance come into my life, such as a book or a concept. Being the comic book nerd, I ended up reading a bunch of Neil Gaiman and getting into Sandman, and absolutely loving the concept of anthropomorphic ideas, such as the endless. And I was like, okay, this is a physical embodiment of an idea. That's an amazing concept. And then the concepts of story with Cain and Abel being characters from the very first story. But then I also really like the fact that they live in the House of Mystery and Secrets, which is in a graveyard in the back hills of Kentucky. So the overall concept of the media that I was intaking at that time was kind of magical in concepts. And then, but in those early stages, there was no practice.
Right, okay. So just total armchair occultist at this point.
Yeah, but not even quite occultist at that, I would say. Just general interest and dabbling. Petty dabbler.
Any point, I suppose, did you go looking for this kind of stuff, or were you always kind of just on the receiving end of it? That, like, just kind of, I suppose I say, like, by happenstance that it arrives in your life, or was there ever a point where you go, I'm going to look for a bit more of this?
Now, I've always had image issues. And so I kind of got into, the concept of working out, and started and discovered yoga.
Okay.
And meditation. So I kind of went into that era a little bit, and the ideas of incense and essential oils. It was more into holistic ideas that kind of my life searching as travels went, I guess.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
As of concepts of magic, it really wasn't there yet.
Did you start doing magic then at that point?
ordered like a few like random things from the book, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get these books too. Those look very interesting because I'd read that Green Magic book. I was like, hey, that's kind of on the same line, and ended up skimming through that and really start kind of deep diving into I guess the Sabbats and the general concepts and spirituality ideas of Wicca.
Okay.
It was still, that was whenever it become really armchair. Yeah, I was reading more. And then whenever I dove into the Green Magic book, it was psychological concepts is the way it was broke down. It was NLP and like mapping, model mapping.
Right. Yeah. No spooky woo-woo at all in it. It was all psychological.
It was very book was written in kind of a funny way. Like yeah, there was kind of a lot of jokes in the general concept of the life as a movie.
Okay. Yeah.
And you're the director, and I was really liking the concepts in it, and it started out with this basic meditation and visualization techniques. It played on the sensibilities of being interested in the concepts of woo. I always liked the idea of magic, and even going back to as being a little kid, like I wanted to develop as could I have psychic powers? I want to see if I can move that coat hanger. I want to move my mind. I had a very active imagination as a kid, and I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. So there was a lot of just making stories up and playing out in the woods. And I got into art and drawing and writing because of that. Just massive imagination. There was kind of this idea of maybe it's real, maybe it's not. I don't want to seem silly. I'm an adult. Yeah. But the ideas of magic coming into this time, I was like, maybe this stuff is real.
What happened next?
Well, life happened. Around the time that I ordered the books, I ended up going through my divorce. So life took a serious downturn.
Okay.
And it was around this time that getting into a kind of a tough part of life is I really didn't grow up too well. Well, I had a pretty good home life, but I got made fun of a lot as a kid. I dealt with therapy as a child.
Did you feel excluded, I suppose, from other people, or what? Like, did you feel?
I always felt excluded.
Yeah.
As a real young kid, my parents worked with me at home whenever it came to school topics, and I was always a sponge for information. And to the point that I was becoming more advanced in school, so they were going to bump me up some grades.
Okay.
And this is as a young child. And the school system was like, you should really kind of stop working with him because they didn't want to bump me up 2 grades because they felt that I was too immature and I wouldn't be able to handle it, which they were right. So I ended up kind of not excelling well in school, and I'm also dyslexic.
Okay.
And we had some issues of getting me tested as a child, so I had reading and comprehension issues, but I had a huge imagination and a sponge for information. School was really rough, and I dealt with a lot of, like I said, I was in therapy for a while. I didn't have a lot of friends. I felt very excluded, and whenever I met my therapist, he ended up introducing me into punk rock music.
Okay. Right.
Cool. The Misfits, and of course, punk rock is very fringe too. So it's, in this area, we listen to country music.
Right.
And, we wear Red Wing boots and, country boy cancer fire. Woo, drive my Ford truck, shotgun.
Right.
I grew up in a very secluded school, which was just really horrible. School life was terrible. I always felt weird because as that sponge of information, I took up a lot of weird things and trivial things, like comic books. Like got real into nerdy things, very nerdy, and nerdy kids tend to not have a lot of friends.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
There was a few people that was interested in the same things that I had friends. We played video games together. Resident Evil was a big thing. But getting off topic, back to the point of dealing with the mental issues and depression.
Mm-hmm.
But getting into punk rock, that really kind of getting into the local music scene. We had a lot more people that were into the weird things, like into anime, into comic books,
Right.
into that kind of that scene, that lifestyle. So I found my people.
Right. Brilliant. Yes.
And, also in those people, there was a lot of agnosticism, a lot of political concepts. I ended up getting a job at a place called the Apple Shop, the Appalachian Media Institute.
Okay.
And it was a place that was created to show the outside world that this area isn't the Beverly Hillbillies.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier being in high school of, it's very country. It is country here. It's country. It's very religious. But the people are mostly nice.
Yeah.
Like I said, being through high school was terrible. And the area, finding the Apple Shop and working with, I guess, people who would be more on the concept of hippie, if you want to say that.
Yeah.
It's a terrible term, but just as a general concept. Dealing with finding my first people who were vegan, dealing with my first people who were trans, more kind of political concepts. And at the Apple Shop, like I said, the idea of showing people from the outside world that this isn't the Beverly Hillbillies, it was using media, documentary films, radio. So I ended up working as a documentary filmmaker
Cool.
for a while. This is while in high school, and finding a people to live within. All these different aspects, these different cats that I'm dealing with. You have such a range of people inside the, for lack of a better word, the punk rock scene.
Right. Yeah.
So as of getting out of that seclusion, that is where I found life.
Okay.
So I dealt with those mental issues my whole life, and then I ended up meeting my ex-wife, and her and I went through the punk rock scene together.
Right. Yeah.
Since the whole thing, and that was kind of a lifesaver at my time because I thought about suicide and I dealt with some issues with major depression and just really not enjoying life.
Sure. Yeah.
And at the time that I got the books, going back to that again because I cycle around a lot.
That's okay. Feel free to cycle.
The bouts of depression come back. The black dog decided to show its head again.
And was there any trigger at all going on with the depression and the thing, or was it just like kind of life in general, just like, did it all seem internal to you, or was it external factors? Or do you know?
Really both, because there's a lot of self-hate.
Right. Yeah.
Generally not liking myself. But then, there's always these outside things happening. Like, it always seems like terrible things seem to happen.
Right.
While I was in school, I had a lot of bad things happen, like really, really terrible things. As of people being just shitty. I had a real deep moment here. I actually had a kid on the school bus rub dog shit in my hair.
Oh wow, that's
like
intense,
really intense things. Like it was horrible, and this was like almost a constant thing. And whenever I finally transferred schools and I ended up meeting my ex-wife and getting into the punk rock scene, I found my people, and all that kind of changed for me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I had a big boost in life of getting into concepts and ideas, and I've always been kind of a deep thinker. And inside that group, there was all these different ideas flowing around. So that was a big boost in my life. And then going through the divorce, it really took a lot out of me, because I was raised with these sensibilities of you get married and that's what you do.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
grow up, have a family, and and staying the distance. But her and I could not survive together. We fought all the time. It got to the point that it was just too intense.
Yeah.
And then the concepts of suicide come up again, and just not really liking life and dealing with the horribleness of it. And then
So it's just kind of cycling back to what you were saying about why you kind of felt a bit that your religious upbringing wasn't answering the questions. It was because you'd look at life and you go, life is terrible. And you'd look at the church and it would go, well, you're not answering the question of why is life terrible? You're telling me life is wonderful, but my experience is life is terrible. And then you go out into the world and trying to find a place, and I suppose find yourself within this world first, and then kind of try and find the answer of, well, is life terrible? And if it is, what am I going to do that? Or is there more to it? Is there something that I'm just not seeing or whatever? Is that kind of where you're finding yourself at this point in your life?
In the depths of the depression, it's really kind of hard to see the world in any sort of fashion. And then I really let the concepts of spirituality just fade away.
Nice.
Through more life experiences, I ended up bouncing from relationship to relationship for a while, and lived a very unhealthy lifestyle. Got into alcohol and drinking and wanted to party, and really in escapism. There was a lot of escapism in that.
Yeah, yeah.
So the concepts of spirituality faded in and out. And getting into the books, I finally got to a point in my life to where, because I kept the books for a while,
Right.
Without reading them, because of depression and going through those concepts. But one of the things that got me out of that depth of depression was getting into yoga and finally reading the books.
Right.
And the concepts of magic and spirituality really took hold. And the concepts of meditation.
Yeah.
And then the mental modeling.
Yeah.
And the NLP. And then the visualizations. And in the book, it starts mentioning doing a breathing technique, like focusing on an idea, making a God form.
Yeah.
They get into God forms and speaking to plant spirits. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to try some of this shit and see if it works.
Yeah.
Which started laying the groundwork for the concepts of being a chaos magician.
Okay.
That's where it really got to. So I started trying things.
Okay. What sort of stuff did you try?
In the book, it builds you slowly. So you start with like a breathing exercise, and you imagine a bubble inside your gut.
Okay.
And then it's growing bigger around you with the inhale and smaller with the exhale.
Okay.
So on and so forth, until you have a mental bubble completely around you that would be existing in the astral space.
Sure.
Kind of touches on those ideas.
Yeah.
And then thinking of a feeling, or thinking of a memory that gives you a certain feeling. Like if you want to think of love, you would think of a loving memory, and then you would try to embody that idea. Breathe into it, give it a color, make it move, make it go all over your body, push it out of your body, and then speak to it.
Okay, right, okay.
So I'm like, this is nuts, but I'm gonna try it because the ideas of, is there something out there? Is there another realm? And the ideas of multiple realities, and if the ideas of God or God things existing, what is there a creator? I've always felt that there is a creator in a sense. So this feels like a perfect path to get into, to maybe figuring some shit out about myself, or to make some cool shit happen. I want to get some money, and I want to get laid.
Yeah.
Let's do that. That's where we're at. Because I'm selfish. So
Well, no, I don't think it's selfish to want to have money and get laid. I think it's a quite normal human kind of wants and needs.
Oh, for sure. Now,
So when did Wicca then, I suppose, turn into chaos magic?
Getting back to Grant Morrison and the cycles of life coming back around, I end up finding out Alan Moore declaring himself as a magician, and then finally coming around to the DisinfoCon. God, it took forever to get to this. And then the ideas of sigils, and in the Witchcraft Bible, it has it talked about the ideas of sigils and making talismans, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try this. Like, I'm gonna start burning some candles, and I ended up setting up my living room by the corners. So in the eastern corners, I had like feathers hung over the door, and in the had a blue corner and had some dolphin statues, and the very ocean, that's where I had some seashells. I had north corner for green, had some like tree shaped incense burners. I kind of set up my house with these witchy symbols, I guess.
Yeah.
Which kind of come from the different books I was reading with inside the Witchcraft Bible. I was like, I'm gonna put these different things to represent the four corners, and that's where I started doing my setting up a ritual space, right, and setting up altars. And so I was following both very Wiccan concepts, but I was also reading these psychological concepts of creating bubbles and creating thought forms and creating God forms. And it was like a meld of these two concepts. And then I find the DisinfoCon, and I'm like, holy shit, chaos magic's a thing. I've been doing this, and it's blending. Oh, I can blend things? That's cool. So then it just deep dive into more information and just blending more concepts to it, and looking at the witch idea of it as, okay, this is a correspondence of this color represents this this god or goddess, but then the psychological concept of this color represents a feeling, an emotion that responds with inside myself, blending the two concepts. And within trying, I ended up trying to speak to a plant spirit. First things that I tried to do by going through the steps in the book, by building a bubble around myself, learning to feel within a feeling, visualizing. I tried to speak to a plant spirit, and I was like, I'm going to smoke a joint, and I'm
see what happens.
I'm going to do all this stuff, and I'm going to see if I can have something happen. I saw a layover kind of in my vision, and I spoke to it, and I quieted my mind, and I asked it its name, and I waited for a response. And the first thing that came to my mind, I was like, okay, that's the name. Right now, I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
Years ago, and I'm a terrible note taker. I should journal more.
Everyone should. It's not just you.
Through this entire experience, like, I'm crying, right? I'm feeling this very powerful experience. This being is here. I go through the entire process. I absorb everything back into myself, explode it all visually, let it all sparkle down, and let it go. First thing I did was went straight to Google and typed in the name to see what it meant. And through some search, it was the name was the name of a drink that, not unlike bong
Oh, right.
have-
Okay.
or
No,
bang, how you pronounce that?
How are you spelling it?
It's like BAHG. It's a drink in like I want to say it's Indonesia. I could be very wrong about that.
I'm not familiar with it.
It's a marijuana-based drink, like it's
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
guilt thing. It's a drink not unlike that in some obscure country made from marijuana.
Okay. Cool.
And the name was like, the drink of the gods or whatever.
All right.
And I was like, okay, that's very weird. Like, this is a name I've never heard before, or at least can't remember picking up in any other information that I've seen in my life,
Yeah.
which is also very possible that I could have seen it somewhere and just completely forgot about it. But I don't remember hearing the name ever and looking it up. And the fact that it was another name for cannabis in some other part of the world, like that was extremely obscure. I talked to the plant spirit, and this was the name it gave me. And that
Cool.
was that's really kind of like, okay, maybe something's weird here,
Yeah.
But also as a realist, I was like, okay, maybe I did pick this up and I'm tapping into my subconscious. So the ideas of maybe it being just me talking to myself, it was also very there, but also maybe this is an outside force. So I've always felt very polarized of what to
Yeah.
believe in a sense,
Or both.
or both. Maybe it's
Yeah.
both. I don't
Yeah.
But also during that time, I ended up losing my job, and I like the idea of praying to different gods and goddesses,
Okay.
like mixing and matching. And I never realized that was chaos magic. That's what I was doing until after watching the DisinfoCon. So I've been doing all this stuff, but I ended up praying to Aphrodite
Okay.
because I was jobless and I really needed some love in my life. I was feeling very down. I was going through another breakup,
Okay.
and I was jobless, as I really needed some love. And I went to sleep. I ended up doing a ritual to Aphrodite, trying to call her forth. I went to sleep. Within 2 or 3 hours later, I woke up to a phone call for a job interview. Had a job that day.
Cool.
So I was like, okay, maybe this stuff really is working. So I ended up trying another concept of, at that time, the job I got was I worked in a factory. And so there was a lot of physical labor, a lot of moving around. And I wanted to try another thing from the book, which was to embody the concept, call forth a God form, but give it your own image. What image does it apply to you that feels right? So, the ideas of, I did Mercury.
Okay.
In my mind, I saw the Flash.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Using a visualization technique, I visualized myself at work doing things, and then in my mind, I overlaid a picture of the Flash, and I just switched back and forth.
Yeah.
And then I absorbed it all, went to work, and whenever I stepped on the factory floor, I felt a surge of energy hit me so hard that I couldn't stop. I worked as hard as I could. Like it was intense. And as soon as I stepped off the factory floor, it was like all the energy just zapped me, and I was gone, and I was zonked. Went home and passed out.
Cool.
I was like, okay, so I felt that ritual worked. I called forth Mercury and asked for a little bit of energy and speed and efficiency at work, and I got it.
Cool.
But
Did it was it just one day you got it, or was it like that?
It did last for like that first day was the most energetic,
Right.
but then that whole week was very productive, and it started to slack off
Right. Okay.
as the week went on. But that first couple of days was very intense. So, but ended up doing that, and it worked. Either I psychologically, freaked myself out and raised my adrenaline by using hardcore visualization, or I spoke to a god. Either or, it doesn't really matter at this point, but it worked.
Yeah, that's it. Like it doesn't matter because you got the result you wanted, which is that's the main thing.
This was like the first like really inklings of proof that okay, maybe this stuff is really like solid. This works. So then I just deep dove into it, and then it become a part of my natural life. Everything that I did, I started blending magic into, and with that ebbed and flowed throughout my life to where I was more magical, and then sometimes I was less. But then it's got to a point to where magic is a part of my everyday life. Using sigils, I tried using sigils during whenever I first started doing the Mercury and the Aphrodite work and the plant spirit stuff. I started doing sigils during that time too, and I started doing first one I did was for weight loss. I wanted to be down to at least 200 pounds.
Okay.
At the time, I was like 298.
Oh wow. Okay.
Within about 6 months, I got down to 198.
Oh wow.
I was doing
good for you.
every day, work for like 45 minutes a day, meditating daily. I juice fasted for like 2 or 3 weeks. I was predominantly vegetarian at that time, and was probably the most healthiest I'd ever been in my entire life. And went through another bout of depression, lost it all, and completely forgot about it. And that was like one of the cycles of my life, is that I would go through a peak of magic and then drop down, and something terrible would happen in my life, another bout of depression, and I'd forget about it, and then I'd eventually come back to it. Every time that I would come back to it, I'd come back to it stronger. Like I would be more into it.
Right.
To the point that at one place that I lived had a circular bathtub, and I would cast circles in the bathtub and take spiritual baths, light candles that way.
Oh, cool.
And that's whenever I first got into the concept of trance.
Yeah.
But during that time, I got into the concepts of lucid dreaming, mugwort, leaf type stuff, and trying to really start analyzing my subconscious, my dreams, but also practicing getting into the concepts of trance and candle magic.
Right.
And so there was a lot of that going on. And the first trance I got into, I ended up freaking the girlfriend I was with at the time. She really tripped out. She's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was wild." Also during that time, I started, trying other illicit drugs, psilocybin, LSD.
Okay. Yeah.
Not in hard amounts, but definitely a natural street freak. If it come across, if somebody hands it to me, I'm taking it.
Right. Yeah.
But also, I didn't touch the hard stuff. Nothing up my nose, no needles. Just like I really like the ideas of going to a different place, but not killing myself.
Yeah. Because you said at the beginning that you would come back to the remote viewing thing, and I was just wondering, when did remote viewing come back into it?
Actually, funny enough, I forgot a lot about remote viewing, and I've every time that I would sit down and watch Men Who Stare at Goats, I'd end up coming back to it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back into this, and then I would forget about it for a while. And like I said, the magic did very much ebb and flow in my life, and whenever I got back into it was whenever I discovered your videos.
Oh, right. Okay.
I was like, oh, here's somebody else who's into remote viewing. Oh yeah, I'm getting back into this. This is gonna be cool.
Yeah.
But I'll get to that. During that ebb of my life of magic, with the magic bathtub and everything, that's whenever things started to get a little bit more intense, and I started having a lot more problems with alcohol.
Okay.
And a lot of my escapism. And then I went through another bout of depression, but I come back off of that one really quick. and I ended up getting an apartment. It was the first time I lived on my own, and I ended up setting up. And well, since I was on my own, I was like, finally, I'm on my own. I'm having my own place. I got my own car. I got a job. Everything's cool. And I set up a room in my house as a sanctuary and really start practicing magic and really start getting into the concepts of my own personal psychology and shadow work. Around this time's whenever I discovered your videos, and I think what year this was. It doesn't matter. But
Yeah, well, it's in the last couple of years anyway, because I've only been doing the videos 3 years. Would that be right? Something like that.
Yeah. It's some of your earlier videos. I think Freighter Xavier, The Mind of Magic. I started finding those.
Yeah.
DELUXE. Found some of those, and I started watching a lot of YouTube.
Yeah.
But then also started like practicing magic more hardcore, getting into using demon seals, trying out the seals of Solomon, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I ended up losing my shit completely during that time. I started seeing things, really questioned my mental state, and dealing real hard with, I guess, the isolation and the depression, and things really got rough during that time. And
I agree. That's a kind of a standard story if people start fucking around with the Goetia, though. You know what I mean?
Well, things got really weird. Like I said, I started seeing things. I started seeing what I had a ghost cat.
Oh, right, cool.
So like in my apartment, out of the corner of my eye, you would see it in the kitchen. Like that was a cat on the counter. I would have friends come over, and they were like, "Hey, man, do you have a cat?" I'm like, "No, but yes."
Yeah.
And then I would explain that I have a ghost cat. Multiple people had seen it. That was cool. That was not a problem. But I started seeing other things. Like I saw a lady in a white dress, like following me down my hallway.
Oh no.
And I'm like, okay, I'm tripping out. I'm having some mental issues. I went and got a CAT scan. I'm making sure that I don't have a tumor.
Yeah.
But then I ended up actually trying to kill myself during this time. I lost my shit mentally. It really took a lot out of me. I ended up doing a stay in a mental institution for like about a week, just on a suicide watch. I got on meds, got out of it, and I went through some of like the worst things in my life. And I had to figure out a way to get out of it. So I come back to magic for the last time, which is where I'm at today.
Okay.
So coming back to magic for the last time, I come back even harder and stronger. Discovering your videos, getting more into the Grant Morrison and chaos magic. A lot of the books that you have suggested over the time.
Yeah.
The concepts of hyper sigils and Grant Morrison. Really getting into the invisibles. That was a good book.
Yeah.
And then Alan Chapman, following a lot of that. I followed his Magia program, but that has gained more and more speed the more information that I've picked up. But the more solid I've become mentally.
Right.
Everything that I've been doing has worked myself out of the hole that I've been in, and there has been this level of positivity and this of betterment. As an artist, like I've really struggled with not feeling like I'm not good enough when I'm drawing, or I show somebody something, I'm like, here, look at this, and I'm still like, they like it, but I'm like, nah, man, it's not really that good. But I've also started to come out of my shell a lot, which each step that I've taken in magic has opened up my confidence to be able to speak to people and to live life happily.
Great.
And so after dealing with the Goetia stuff, like I was like, nah, I'm not going to dabble in that anymore.
Yeah.
Break from magic. But whenever I come back into it, I've come back into it softly. I still use sigils every day. I have them up on a pin board right by my door. I use the 40 servants. That has been a big big help in my life, of just to be able to focus on a sigil and look at a concept that exists either outside of myself or within inside of myself, both at the same time, but focusing on that point of my life and fixing it. Hey, is there any issues there? And I've also, the ideas of, shadow working, going back and looking at my past and being okay with some of the things and letting go of the hate and the anger, and realizing that those are human emotions that I'm allowed to feel, but I don't have to. Yeah. I can be who I am and and live a happy life and not have to worry about the past and not have to worry about the future. But with each step into magic, getting into reality transurfing with the concepts of pendulums, realizing that everything is a pendulum has calmed my ass down.
Yeah, it's a game changer, all right.
There's with each new bit of information, it's a game changer, and you have those fun little realizations like, oh, that's nice. Well, what's fun is being around people who have no idea about magic, and then you have a weird little synchronicity happen, and you start giggling, and they're like, "What?" I'm like, nothing. Versus cool. But then realizing synchronicities. Like I mentioned all these cycles in my life, and looking back at it now, there were all these synchronicities happening, pushing me in a certain direction. And I feel that I've finally started flowing with the river versus trying to pull upstream. And I feel like my philosophical outlook on life has definitely been a lot happier and better due to magic. It has been, so far, it's been an amazing journey. It just feels like it just keeps getting better.
Well, that's good. That's a hell of a turnaround from some of the times in your life where it was certainly the opposite of that.
There was, a lot of good things. I realized that there was a lot of steps, like, getting into the punk rock scene, like really was a step forward in my life. And getting into magic was another step forward, like pushing me to who I want to be. But also it pushed me to the concepts and ideas and the people that have inspired me. As a comic book lover, an inspiring writer and artist, those concepts, and Neil Gaiman and Alan Moore, like I keep a book of Alan Moore on my altar. Like,
right, cool.
It's just his picture, and he's like staring at me all the time. I'm like, I'm looking at you, Alan.
I see you.
I see you. But those have been inspirational, and a lot of the YouTubers have bbeen very inspirational. And as of your journey has been very inspirational with the creation of the servants. That has been a big help in the life.
Yeah.
I just recently went through the initiation fully because I never could get to.
Yeah.
Because I'm a lazy procrastinator, which is the reason why I can't get any art out.
You may work on that.
But yeah, magic has definitely inspired a lot, and it's definitely taken me out of the depths of some of the major depression that I've dealt with. And I've realized that I'm at fault.
That's it. You're responsible for how you feel, not at fault.
Well, I take responsibility for how I feel.
That's it.
I take responsibility for how I feel. And the blending of psychological concepts and the ideas of symbolism and using correspondences, like I can look at the color pink and psychologically I can think, okay, that's love. But I can also separate my mind and put it into the magical concept that's a representation of Aphrodite,
Sure. Yeah.
I can use that, and the ideas of chaos magic, blending those two concepts together, helps me practice daily. It's adding daily little rituals and making things a little bit more magical.
Sure.
Using my tablet as a black mirror.
Yeah, it's all of these little things to re-enchant the world, like, and it all really helps. It's like it's not necessarily the big magics or the big ceremonies or wearing the robes. It's the little things every day that kind of reinvigorates magic.
I do a little bit of that too, because the ideas of blending is, and being a sci-fi nerd, I'll blend the well, I guess it goes back to Grant Morrison, the whole kind of like super gods kind of thing, like the fact that I use the Flash as an image for Mercury, but I like to add those little small correspondences into my life, like this is this, and as of wearing a robe, I will I have a hooded shirt that I like to wear, so
Nice.
whenever I put it up, I'm a wizard.
Yeah, you look cool, man.
So it's like wearing a daily armor kind of thing. As of enchanting my clothes or the jewelry that I wear, or my things, adding those small little correspondences to it, but also in fun, quirky ways.
I like the quirkiness of it, because I think an awful lot of people in magic can take it, or a bit, not, I was going to say don't take it a bit too seriously, but that's not what I mean. What I mean is they're a bit too serious with it, and they forget that humor is such a huge part of it, particularly in chaos magic, where the ultimate banishing is laughing, and it's that thing that even Alan Moore talks about, where the initial kind of thing of that if you wanted to ridicule someone or to to kind of make them look foolish was to write comedy songs about them. That's what the bard's job as a magician was because you could ultimately destroy someone's reputation through humor that you can't really do through a fist fight in many ways, So the humor element I really enjoy. So tell me this, ElectroWizard, what is the future holding for you? What is your art, your creativity, and your magic going to appear like in the future?
Hyper sigils. Yeah. I've toyed with that concept a lot. I'm doing one. Just come on, let's make life a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
I imagine the future is very bright, that I have to wear shades.
Nice.
No, I'm just expecting a lot of really good positive things to happen. Life is really taking a crazy upturn, and like there's just so much this positive energy that's just welling up inside me that it's fun. I'm about to get emotional. I don't want to.
Get emotional with positivity. I encourage it.
Oh yeah, like it's been so far it's been an amazing run, and I'm expecting so much more. I've been like I said, I use sigils and stuff daily. I use breathing exercises daily. I do yoga. I've been doing 30-day challenges. This month I've been doing yoga daily, and last month was push-ups for that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
So trying to take a page out of SPud's book, do a 30-day challenge. That's cool. So, but as of that, that's working things further, working those daily rituals into my life, and I just see those going further. I have to figure out what else I'm going to do for the rest of the year, but I think it's going to be amazing.
Cool, brilliant.
And, like it's really hard to explain to you or anyone else what's going on up in the brain here. Concepts are hard to convey sometimes, but
well, that's the purpose of art, I think. So, I mean, being an artist, I think it's sometimes we can have these kind of ideas in our heads that don't work so well with words, but can come out in other ways. So, I think that's one of the purposes of art, anyway. So, I look forward to seeing you turning your concepts in your head into your art and into your hyper sigils. And thank you very much for having a chat with me. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very insightful, and I would definitely love to talk to you again. Is there anything you'd like to say before we go?
It's been a great conversation. It's been actually a pretty wonderful morning. So I hope you have a fantastic day, and rock and roll, dude.
Rock and roll.